We want to turn now to a series of stories that we are doing this week on how U.S. food regulations have left American consumers exposed to chemicals and additives that have been banned in other countries.
Imagine rolling your cart into Costco, that echoing warehouse of bargain glory where the aisles promise wellness, value, and a lifetime supply of anything you could ever want. The shelves tower like nutrition billboards, shouting words like organic, clean, healthy, and natural. The place smells like rotisserie chicken, optimism, and the bold belief that if it's sold in bulk, it must be good for you. But here's the twist no one warns you about. Across the Atlantic in Europe, same products, same brands, some of these so-called healthy essentials aren't just questioned. They're outright banned, not delayed, not debated, banned. While Americans grab them by the case thinking they're leveling up their health, Europeans see them as red flags in brightly colored packaging. Because the EU plays by a different rulebook, one where safety trumps sales and a healthy label doesn't get a free pass. And today on Thrifty Thinker, we're walking straight down Costco's most trusted aisles to uncover the foods Europe said absolutely not to. And the reasons might change the way you shop forever. If even one of these surprises you, hit that like button and subscribe. Because here at Thrifty Thinker, we don't just stretch a dollar. We expose the truth hiding behind the price tag. Let's start with the one item almost every Costco shopper thinks is a health win: the Kirkland Signature Protein Bars. These things are everywhere, in gym bags, office drawers, glove compartments, and anyone's pantry who swears they're eating cleaner this week. On the outside, they look perfect: high protein, low sugar, gluten-free, and wrapped in packaging that practically winks at you, promising guilt-free fuel. But here's what most people don't realize. In Europe, these bars wouldn't just get a warning label. They'd be stopped at the border. The main reason is the sweeteners hiding inside them: sucralose and acesulfame potassium. Two artificial ingredients so controversial that the European Union has restricted or heavily warned against them. Studies suggest they can disrupt your gut bacteria, mess with insulin response, and basically throw your metabolism off its game. In the US, we call that healthy snacking. In Europe, they call it unnecessary risk. And let's talk about that fiber number plastered across the label. 16 grams sounds impressive until you look closer. It's not coming from oats or whole grains. It's coming from extracted additives, synthetic forms of fiber that don't behave the same way real food does. Instead of supporting your digestion, they can turn your stomach into a noisy parade no one asked for. Europe doesn't play that game. If it's not whole, recognizable food, they don't want it. But the real difference comes down to philosophy. Americans love anything that sounds healthy: high protein, low sugar, clean label. We trust the packaging. We trust the marketing. Meanwhile, European regulators flip the script. They look past the buzzwords and ask a much simpler question: does this product actually support long-term health? If the answer isn't solid, it doesn't get on the shelf. So while Costco shoppers toss these bars into their carts thinking they've made a smart choice, Europe looks at the same bar and sees something closer to a chemistry experiment than a fitness snack. And once you understand why, it gets a lot harder to unwrap one without wondering what's really inside. Now let's move over to something you've probably used hundreds of times without a second thought: Kirkland Vegetable Oil Cooking Spray. It sits on the shelf looking harmless, almost comforting, the kind of staple every American kitchen just has. You spray the pan, cook your eggs, bake your veggies, and never once stop to think about what's actually inside that can. But if you tried to bring this exact product into Europe, it wouldn't just get flagged, it would get rejected on the spot. The oil itself isn't the problem. Europe has no issue with sunflower or canola oil. The real issue is everything that makes this spray work: the propellant system that pushes the oil out of the can. And this is where things get messy. Kirkland's spray uses butane, propane, and isobutane. Yes, the same gases that fuel your camping stove, your grill, and your lighter. In the United States, this combo is considered standard for cooking sprays. In Europe, those ingredients throw up hazard signs instantly. The EU bans their use in food products because of concerns around inhalation, residue, and long-term exposure, even at low levels. And this isn't just theoretical. Studies have shown that tiny amounts of these propellants can cling to food, especially when sprayed into hot pans. America shrugs and calls it convenience. Europe looks at the same data and says, why risk it at all? And then there's the zero-calorie illusion. These cans brag about being calorie-free, which sounds amazing, until you read the fine print. The serving size, the amount that allows them to legally say 0 calorie, is defined as a quarter-second spray. That's shorter than the blink of an eye. It's physically impossible to use it that way in real cooking. A normal 2-second spray? That's real calories, real fat, and a lot more chemicals than the label wants to admit. Europe's position is simple. If a product relies on unrealistic serving sizes or misleading marketing to seem healthier, that's a red flag. If it contains chemicals that don't need to be there, that's another red flag. Stack enough red flags and the product doesn't get sold. Period. Meanwhile, in the US, these cans fly off Costco shelves because they're cheap, convenient, and wrapped in health buzzwords like heart healthy and 0 calories. But when you strip away the branding, you're left with an oil diluted with campfire gases, something Europe decided a long time ago wasn't worth the risk. So the next time you give your pan that quick spray, it might be worth remembering. It's not just oil coming out of that can. And if Europe won't let it into their kitchens, maybe it deserves a second look in ours. Now let's move into the snack aisle, where bright packaging and cute mascots do a lot of heavy lifting. Because one of the most surprising items on Costco shelves that Europe wants nothing to do with is something parents buy thinking they're choosing a better option for their kids. Annie's organic bunny fruit snacks. On the outside, these things look innocent, almost angelic. Cute little gummy bunnies, promises of organic fruit juice. A brand that markets itself like the crunchy, wholesome alternative to candy. It's exactly the kind of snack parents feel good tossing into a lunchbox. But in Europe, these snacks stop being adorable the second you read the ingredient list. The problem starts with the colors. Those bright reds, yellows, and oranges don't come from strawberries or carrots. They come from artificial dyes, specifically red 40 and yellow 5. Two additives that the EU has either banned outright or forces products to carry ADHD warning labels for. Not because Europe is extra cautious, but because multiple studies suggest these dyes can affect behavior, hyperactivity, and attention in children. In Europe, these aren't just ingredients. They're considered risk factors. And here's the part most parents never realize. The word organic on Annie's packaging only applies to some of the ingredients. It doesn't magically detoxify the rest. The dyes, the concentrated sweeteners, the additives, all of that still gets in under the radar. It's the nutritional equivalent of sprinkling kale on a donut and calling it a balanced breakfast. Even major brands like M&M's and Skittles reformulated their European versions to avoid these dyes, using natural coloring like beet juice or turmeric instead. In other words, they know how to make cleaner versions. They just don't have to do it here. In the US, these gummies are marketed as a healthier choice, a better-for-you treat. The label leans into the word organic because they know parents trust it. Meanwhile, Europe takes one look and says, if kids need behavioral warnings before eating it, we're not selling it. The contrast is huge. One side of the world sees a cute snack, the other sees a chemical cocktail with a cartoon bunny on the front. So the next time you see someone grab a giant Costco box of these and smile like they've made a responsible choice, remember, Europe already decided these weren't worth the risk. And once you know that, it becomes a lot harder to think of these gummies as harmless. A few aisles over, past the granola bars and the healthy-ish snack options, you'll spot a bag that practically begs to be seen as virtuous. Bright splashes of spinach green, tomato red, carrot orange, the kind of colors that whisper, hey, look at me. I'm vegetables. I'm good for you. This is the world of veggie straws, one of the most cleverly marketed snacks in Costco. In America, veggie straws have become the unofficial mascot of guilt-free snacking. Parents hand them to toddlers like they're handing over tiny kale chips. Adults pick them up thinking they've outsmarted junk food. And with a name like veggie straws, who wouldn't feel a little healthier eating them? But here's the twist. If you tried to sell this exact product in Europe, regulators wouldn't just raise an eyebrow. They'd slam the brakes. And once you read the ingredient list, it becomes painfully clear why. Veggie straws are made mostly from potato starch, cornstarch, and vegetable oil. That's the foundation. Not real vegetables, not whole foods, not anything remotely close to what the pictures on the bag imply. Those vibrant colors don't come from carrots and spinach. They come from powders and extracts added in microscopic amounts. Enough to say made with vegetables, but not nearly enough to matter nutritionally. Europe doesn't allow that kind of sleight of hand. If the packaging shows actual vegetables, the product is expected to contain actual vegetables in meaningful amounts. Not just a hint, not a sprinkle, not essence of broccoli. America sees the pictures and nods approvingly. Europe sees the pictures and calls it misleading marketing. And when you compare the nutrition, the whole thing gets even more absurd. Veggie straws have less fiber than a slice of white bread, and white bread is practically the international symbol of nutritionally empty. These straws don't offer vitamins, minerals, or any real benefits. They just offer crunch, flavoring, and a carefully engineered illusion. Think about that. A snack pretending to be a vegetable is actually less nutritious than something people constantly label as junk. The EU takes that seriously. Their rules prioritize transparency. If a company wants to dress something up as healthy, the ingredients have to back up the outfit. In America, we're more lenient. If it looks healthy, if it sounds healthy, if the colors are convincing enough, it ends up in way too many lunchboxes. And that's what makes veggie straws such a perfect example of the gap between US and European standards. One continent sees a vegetable-themed junk food trying to slip past the radar. The other sees a snack that simply needs better branding to keep selling. So the next time you watch someone toss a family-sized bag of veggie straws into their Costco cart with a proud, responsible parent smile, remember, Europe already made up its mind. They don't consider veggie straws a healthy alternative. They consider them a marketing masterpiece that's just a little too good at pretending. Now let's move from the snack aisle into something that looks genuinely wholesome, even aspirational. If there's one product that Costco shoppers swear by, it's Dave's Killer Bread. With its bold packaging, tattoo-style graphics, and promises of organic grains and seeds, this loaf doesn't just sit on the shelf, it flexes at you. People love this bread. It's the one with the clean ingredients. The one that feels like a nutritional upgrade. The one you proudly leave on your counter because it makes you look like the kind of person who buys the good stuff. But walk into Europe with this exact loaf? Regulators won't even consider it, and the reason has nothing to do with the grains, the seeds, or the organic label. The real issue is something hidden inside the ingredient list that the US barely talks about: synthetic folic acid. And a lot of it. In America, we fortify almost everything: bread, cereal, bars, pasta, snacks, because decades ago, public health officials decided it was the best way to prevent nutrient deficiencies. And it worked. But somewhere along the way, our food became so fortified that many people are hitting 200% or 300% of their daily intake without even realizing it. Dave's Killer Bread is a perfect example. Just one slice gives you around 25% of your daily folic acid. Eat a sandwich and you're halfway through the day's limit before you even tackle breakfast or snacks. Add a fortified cereal or energy bar, and suddenly you're taking in levels the EU considers excessive. Europe sees that as a problem. Not because folic acid is bad, but because too much synthetic folic acid has been linked in some studies to potential cancer risks and masking serious vitamin deficiencies. The science isn't fully settled, but the EU has a clear stance. If something raises health questions, you don't pump it into every loaf of bread. Meanwhile, in the US, we treat folic acid like a harmless bonus. More is better, right? Europe doesn't think so. Their approach is simple. People should get their nutrients from real food, not from eating a daily rotation of chemically fortified staples. The difference is philosophical. America says, if it might help, add it. Europe says, if we're not absolutely sure, don't. So while shoppers here proudly reach for Dave's Killer Bread because it looks clean, bold, and packed with goodness, Europe looks at the same ingredient list and sees something much more concerning. A loaf that's been fortified like a science experiment. The packaging screams organic, non-GMO, clean, and heart-healthy. But behind the cool marketing and the rockstar branding is a nutrient load that Europe simply doesn't accept. And once you understand why, it becomes a lot easier to see how a bread that looks like the gold standard of healthy eating in America can look like a red flag on the other side of the world. Now let's shift into the bottled health section, the place where bright green drinks convince shoppers they're about to make a life-changing decision. And nothing has a stronger grip on that section than Naked Green Machine juice. The vibrant green bottle, the pictures of fruit and leafy greens, the words antioxidants and vitamin-packed plastered across the label, this stuff sells the fantasy of wellness in a single sip. Here's the reality check. In Europe, this drink wouldn't just be controversial, it would be flat-out rejected. Because once you peel back the marketing, you realize that Naked Green Machine is not a health drink. It's a sugar bomb in a yoga outfit. Let's start with the numbers most people never bother to look at. Over 50 grams of sugar per bottle. That's more sugar than a can of Coca-Cola. Think about that. You could drink a soda and actually consume less sugar than what's hiding inside a bottle that advertises itself as being full of spinach and broccoli. But the real trouble begins with the additives. Naked uses synthetic vitamins to artificially inflate the nutrition label, specifically certain forms of vitamins E and D that Europe has banned in fortified beverages due to long-term safety concerns. The EU's position is simple. Natural nutrients should come from real foods, not lab-created supplements dumped into sugary drinks. Then there's the infamous ingredient phrase, natural flavors. It sounds clean, wholesome, harmless, but that term is essentially a legal cloak. It can hide dozens of lab-engineered compounds, all of them technically natural, but anything but simple. Europe doesn't like vague categories that disguise what's actually in the bottle. If a product can't disclose exactly what's inside it, regulators don't let it on shelves. Even the iconic green color that tricks your brain into thinking you're drinking pure health, that color is boosted. It's not just kale and kiwi, it's carefully formulated to look healthier than it truly is. And here's the part that hits hardest. Once the synthetic additives, vague flavorings, and excessive sugars are removed from the equation, there's not a lot of true nutrition left. What's left is a drink that behaves more like dessert than like anything you'd call green machine. Europe saw that and said, no thanks. Not because they don't like juice, but because they don't accept products that disguise sugar water as health food. Meanwhile, in the US, bottles of this stuff disappear from Costco pallets faster than frozen pizzas on sample day. The branding is incredibly effective. People want to believe they're upgrading their health. The truth is, they're getting the same blood sugar spike they'd get from soda, with a few extra synthetic vitamins thrown on top. So while Americans sip it thinking they're doing something good, Europe looks at this green bottle and sees exactly what it is: a cleverly marketed sugar drink wearing a leafy disguise. Now let's talk about something that looks completely harmless. Kirkland organic peanut butter. 2 ingredients, nothing extra, nothing artificial. It feels like the safest jar in the whole store, but Europe won't touch it. And the reason has nothing to do with the label. It's about aflatoxins, toxic mold compounds that can form on peanuts stored in warm, humid conditions. The US allows low levels, testing only samples from each batch. Europe doesn't. Their limits are far stricter, and they test every shipment with near zero tolerance. And organic doesn't prevent the issue. Aflatoxins form after harvest, not during farming. So while American shoppers see a clean, simple spread, European regulators see a contamination risk not worth taking. After walking through these aisles, one thing is clear: a lot of the healthy Costco staples we trust wouldn't even make it onto shelves in Europe. Not because Europe is stricter for fun, but because their standards demand real safety, not just convincing marketing. Here in the US, we see words like organic and low sugar and assume we're making smart choices. But Europe sees the same products and calls out the additives, the sweeteners, the dyes, the shortcuts. And that's the point: not to scare you, but to remind you to look closer. Healthy isn't about the label on the front. It's about what's hiding in the fine print on the back. So the next time you're at Costco, ask yourself, if Europe won't put it on their shelves, why am I putting it in my cart? If this opened your eyes, hit like, subscribe, and tell me which product shocked you the most. At Thrifty Thinker, we don't just shop smart, we shop informed.